Welcome to a new month of KidMin Academy. This month, we're going to deal with early childhood and preschool ministry. My name is Tina Hauser, and I'm the executive editor of Kids Matter magazine and the senior publications director for Kids Matter. I've been with them for about 7 years now, and 30 years prior to that, I was in children's ministry. Most of my time as a children's pastor, my sweet spot was third grade. But about 10 years ago, I started seeing the need and the potential in preschool ministry. I am the wife of a pastor. It's been about 40 years we've been married. I have one son who is my senior pastor right now here in Shorewood, Illinois. And I am, most importantly, the grandparent to a set of twins that are 6 years old, Bowen and Kendall, who have given me a refresher course in early childhood development. Well, today we're going to talk about the importance of 4 different areas that have to do with preschool ministry. The importance of ministering to preschool families. We'll talk about the importance of ministering to preschoolers. We'll talk about the importance of understanding the preschool brain development. And lastly, we'll talk about the importance of understanding the 4 areas of development that come along with preschool ministry. Well, I want you to know that I firmly believe that when we lay a solid foundation in preschool ministry, we are helping the entire church. We know that preschool ministry is one of, if not the best agent for church growth. Now, you might be saying, okay, we're dealing with preschool ministry, Tina. Why are we concerned about church growth? Well, we're concerned about church growth because we're concerned about families, and we want to identify who they are early on when they're starting their families so that they can grow spiritually together. I want you to get it in your heads that this is not just a babysitting ministry, that you are critical to the growth of the church. You have a huge impact on what goes on everywhere. Why are families of preschoolers so open to the church at this time? This first reason I'm going to give you may make you question where I'm going, but the big reason that we are open, that these families are open to the church at this time, is they're looking for ways to fascinate their kids. They want their preschoolers to be fascinated. They're looking for ways that their kids can learn. Their kids are already excited about life and are learning all kinds of things, and they're looking for programs and experiences and opportunities for them to engage that will fascinate their kids. And so we want to do just that, offer programs and experiences and opportunities for them to engage in the Word of God that will just fascinate them. That means a couple of different things. That means that we have to have a fascinating environment. That means that our team members have to be trained and ready. That means things down to facial expressions and coming in with that yes attitude every time you're with your preschoolers. This door is wide open into the church because parents want to be involved in their preschoolers' lives, especially if it's that first child. They want to be involved because when they head off to school, now all of a sudden, there's 6 or 8 hours that you're handing over to someone else. And entertainment, I mean, let's face it, you can sit in a room and watch a couple preschoolers play and get a lot of laughs. They want to be involved. They're involved in their safety and their nutrition and all of the other things that later on in their lives they're not quite as in tune with. This opportunity for preschool ministry is an open door because there are times, special times during our lives when we are jolted into returning to the church or going to the church for the very first time. And these opportunities are things like when there's a sickness in the family, they're dealing with those issues. Where are we going to go for help? And they turn to the church. Maybe there's been a death in the family. Maybe there's a job change or a loss of a job or a relocation. But one of those main factors is when they start their family. They're reevaluating. They're thinking, who do we want to invest in our child? They're thinking, what is it that we want our child to actually believe? And who is it that's going to teach them those things? Now, that's the open door for getting them here the first time. But how do we get them to come back? I tell you, it's based mainly on the way you receive their child, that initial reception of their child. If they see that you want to get down on their level, that you are wanting to know their name and what they are involved in, and you're communicating with the parents and you're offering something that the kid is really, really engaged in, then adult worship can totally bomb. And if they come to pick up their kid and their kid goes, yeah, can we come back next week? They could care less about how it bombed in the other room. They will come back because of the way you have received their child the very first time they're with you. One of the main thing that I want to get across this month is an idea of partnering and how critical that is. When we talk about the church and partnering with one another, we're usually talking about ministry silos. There's the children's ministry and the youth ministry and the women's ministry and the missions ministry and the men's ministry, all of those, and how we should partner together. That's not what I want you to relate partnering to this month. I want you to think about how we as early childhood directors, pastors, can partner with parents. And we're doing that. We're thinking that way right now with Next Gen and family ministry. But also, I want us to think about how we can partner with their preschool teachers and with their daycare workers and grandparents. All of those people get us all on the same page. And when we can do things that reinforce each other, then we're going to benefit the child. The child is going to grow in a more well-rounded way. We don't want to say that mom and dad, you're responsible for nutrition and a roof over your head and vacations and making sure kids get to school and that kind of thing. And over here, you're just responsible to keep the kid alive until mom and dad get off from work or get them to learn their ABCs and their colors. We want to all be together in this. We want it to be intertwined, to be interrelated, and support one another. So you're probably saying, well, it sounds like a good idea, but how do we get that across? There are several ways, especially with the parents. That time when they come to pick up their child, where you're matching tags or you're checking numbers that coincide, however it is that you do your pickup, you have some time right there, a few seconds to connect with mom or dad, or whoever it is that's picking them up. What they want to hear is something about their child. They want you to tell them something about what they did. So if mom's picking him up and I go, Gabe, get over here. Mom's ready for you. And I turn to her and I say, oh my goodness, I wish I could have videotaped Gabe today in worship. It just touched my heart to watch him worship. That's what mom wants to hear. Now, let me tell you, those kids that are in your group that break the rules, that break things, that pick on others, that are hard, have a difficult time following directions, you need to especially find something positive to say about that child. Because mom or dad, they are used to hearing the negative and having to deal with the problems. They want you to tell them something wonderful that their child did that morning. They also, during this transition time, you need to have the kid repeat something or indicate something they learned this morning. It might be a gesture that they used during a storytelling time. It may be a phrase that they learned, or just asking them, who do we learn about today? And they can shout it out. We want to show them that the physical development that their child is in the middle of, we're incorporating that into our lessons. And this is a perfect time to demonstrate this. We were teaching the story of Elijah and the chariots of fire. Fun lesson. We started off with a PowerPoint of all different kinds of transportation. Of course, there were cars and trucks and a fire truck, but we also included things like a one and a unicycle and a camel and a skateboard. So we were talking about how Elijah had a strange transportation, a chariot of fire that took him to heaven. At the very end, when we're delivering the kids to their parents, I told the kids, all of you go over in the corner, and we've got skateboards over there. When I call your name, I want you to huddle down on one of the skateboards, and one of our helpers will push you all the way across the room to the door. So I would say, Elena, and Elena would get down on her skateboard, and one of the helpers would bring her across, and she'd get off the skateboard and she'd say, Elijah went to heaven in a chariot of fire. Mom was beaming. She wanted to hear what her child had learned, and she wanted to see that we were using some of the other things that were just naturally being developed in her little preschooler. There are other opportunities. That's just a few seconds you have. And see, there are 3-4 things you can do right then in those few seconds that tell parents, we are partnering with you. Now, during the week, when something comes to mind about one of your kids, I found that my best tool is Facebook messages. I'll be thinking about a kid and I go, oh, you know what? I want to tell mom about that. So I get on there and I'll say, I know Tyler's had a little trouble with learning how to hop, but I want you to know that this week he hopped on one foot all the way across the room, picked up his question card and hopped back. We were celebrating with Tyler. What a great morning it was. That says a lot to parents. You're thinking about my kid in the middle of the week when you don't really have to do that. And you're in tune with what his issues are and what he's learning right now. Another way to get across that you are partnering with parents is to repeatedly offer to pray for them specifically about a specific need in their family. This takes a while to build up, but once they realize that you really mean that you're going to be praying for them, your relationship will go to a totally different level. Now, this is not something that when they're being picked up, you go, hey, Norma, is there anything I can pray for your family about? No, this is when you're in the foyer and you're just having a conversation, or you go out to get a Coke, or you just call her on the phone and say, your family was on my mind this week. I just wanted to know, is there anything I can pray for you about? I recently had a chance to pray with a family because I knew that their son, Taylor, was going through some testing. He was a little on the hyperactive side and just had some focusing issues, and they were going to have him tested. So I called and I said, I know Taylor's having these tests, and I know this has really been difficult for you. And I just want you to know that when everything happens, and if you come up with a plan or there's some things that we can do, will you let us know? Because we want your preschool to be doing the same thing as you are at home, and we want to do the same thing so that we can help Taylor the best way possible. I want you to know that goes a long way with parents in telling them that we are partnering with you. We love your child. The last thing I want to mention here to get across this partnering thing is to pull them in Get them involved in some way. It doesn't have to be, okay, you're going to come in and teach for me as my sub. Just little things, because parents of preschoolers want to be in on everything. Yes, I had a parent that had separation issues because she wanted to be in on everything. And I finally had to ask her to not stand at the door the whole time. And so she went out and got in her truck and pulled the truck up to the outside window and sat in her truck and watched what we were doing from the outside window. But they want to be involved. They want to invest in some way. So find a way. It might be, here, Grandma, could you cut out the pieces to this craft that we're going to use in a couple of weeks? Or you say, hey, Mom, I'm going to be changing a costume and I'm in a different room. It's really hard to get it on and then get it back off really fast. Could you come help me do that? Yeah, sure, I can do that. It's only a few minutes. It's easy. But what it does is tell them that you really want me to be part of this. It tells them that, when she sends me an email, I think I might actually read it, because now I'm invested in what's going on there. It is important for us to minister to the whole family, to the parents of preschoolers. Well, this section is on the importance of ministering to preschoolers. Now, we talked about earlier that parents want their kids to be involved in things that fascinate them. And so our objective should be to fascinate our little ones. And you're probably going, Tina, that's our objective? Isn't it something spiritual? Yes, it is. But our objective should be to fascinate them so that we can lay a solid biblical foundation. That is our objective. And it's awesome. And I want to tell you something. If that is your objective, to fascinate kids, it is so much fun to teach that way. I want you to know that learning can happen without being fascinated. You can go over something over and over and over and over again and finally learn it. And that's what our 3rd and 4th graders do with vocabulary, basically. But if we flip that over and we say, if you're fascinated, you will learn. See, I can learn without being fascinated. But if I am fascinated, I will learn, because then I'm going to ask questions. Then I'm going to want to discover. Then I'm going to want to know more about what it is that you're showing me. I want you to get out a pencil right now and write this down, because as soon as this video is over, I want you to jump over to YouTube and I want you to watch a 1 minute, 10-second video. And it's called Hermit Crab Walking. And it is put on there by someone in Shima, Shima, Sedighi, Sedighi. But it's called Hermit Crab Walking. And really, I don't even care if you watch it. Just listen to it, because it's the sound of a preschooler discovering a crab. There are giggles, there are squeals, there are questions. And what I want you to do is take those sounds and put them in your head. And that's what you're shooting for. When you teach, you want to hear those kind of sounds. And believe me, when you listen to this YouTube video, you're going to find yourself making the same kind of delightful sounds. These are the times when kids go, oh my goodness, how'd you do that? Do that again. Where'd that come from? Why does that do that? All of these questions will happen because they're fascinated. And what better thing to fascinate them with is just to be amazed at the Word of God. You know, preschoolers, 4-year-olds in particular, ask 400 to 500 questions a day. That's a lot of questions. That's a lot of fascination. Now, these aren't all questions about, how does that gear work on this? No, these are, when we going there, what color is that? Can I do this? What would happen if? Question after question, 400 to 500 questions a day. So we want them to be fascinated. So they're asking questions about faith, about the church, the family of faith, about God, about Jesus, about the Holy Spirit, about forgiveness. Fascinate them so they ask questions about those things. What is it that they're fascinated by? Pretty much everything. Anything that is new, not new as in new technology and new toys. It's just new to them. It doesn't have to be new. It just has to be new to me. And we get used to assuming that we know how that works and we know where that goes. But all of this is brand new to our little preschoolers. They have not figured all of these things out. So it's all discovery. It's all fascination. During Holy Week, our church observes Maundy Thursday, where the adults come together and have a service, and they take communion together, and they do foot washing. I offered to take the preschoolers during that time, and I thought, what are we going to do? I want to teach them about foot washing. How do I want to do that? Well, I could have just said, now in the other room, your parents are doing this and this and this, and just said it all in words. I could have shown them a video of Jesus washing the disciples' feet. But instead, we decided to lay some plastic down and fill some tubs. And the young man that was helping me sat down on the floor. The kids took off their socks, rolled up their pants, and he had one little boy sit in a chair across from him. And he instructed the little boy step by step. Now I want you to put your feet in the tub, and I'm just going to wash them gently. And I just want you to know that when Jesus knelt and washed his disciples' feet, he was saying, I want to serve you and I want you to serve others. And he spoke into that little boy's life and said, said, I never want you to think that I am better than you. I will always do and help you and serve you any way that I can. That spoke volumes. That was fascinating. That experience was fascinating to all of those kids. And now they understand what foot washing is. It was new to them. That's how we reach preschoolers. We fascinate them with new ways to experience God and his word. Now, let me just ask you something. If we realize that kids are fascinated by all these new things, why do we keep teaching them the same things in the same ways? When we do that, we totally throw fascination out the door. One of the things that is happening in preschoolers is their vocabulary development. And this is where we can really tap into fascination. They are gaining words at an extraordinary, exponential rate. I mean, it's 2 or 3 new words they learn every day. They're learning 20 to 25 new words a week, 80 to 100 words every month they are learning. And it's during these pre-reading years that they're learning all of this vocabulary. Once they start reading, it really, really slows down. Now, what we take from that is vocabulary is best built from experiences and pictures rather than from reading. See, they're having a difficult time reading, and they're trying to get the new word in context with all those words around it, and they're struggling. So their vocabulary slows down a lot then. Preschoolers have what I like to call as photographic vocabulary memory. They have an experience, they learn a new word, and it only takes one time to do that. Case in point, my son was putting a new light fixture in, and the twins were 3.5, 4 years old. And they said, "What you doing, Daddy?" And he said, "I'm putting a new light in. This is called a chandelier. Can you say chandelier?" Chandelier. A couple months later, my son is over at my house doing the same thing. And he's putting in a light fixture over my dining room table. And I had the kids right there, and I said, "Do you know what Daddy is doing?" And they said, "Yeah, he's putting a light in. It's called a chandelier." I said, "What? Where did you learn that word?" And they said, "Because he did one in our house." 2 months, 3 months earlier, they had learned one time the word chandelier, but they had an experience to go with it. So if that's what they're learning, and they're learning these big words, we can't be afraid of teaching them big words because they're fascinated by the experiences that go along with them. And each new experience has new words. You know, in every other field, we are anxious for kids to learn big words. You know, here's my little 3-year-old. "Do you want to explain a pulley to Grandma?" This is a whisk, and we're going to whisk the batter. This tool is a whisk, and what we do is called whisking. The birds are flying overhead, and they look up and they watch this V of geese going, and you say, "You know what they're doing?" "No, they're flying." "Yes, but that's called migrating." Migrate, what does that mean? It means they're going someplace that's warmer for a while. They'll be back. But then, when it comes to spiritual things or words in the Bible that just seem a little too big, we back off from them. When we could be using words like ephod and pomegranate and seraphim. One morning, I was teaching the kids the story of Gideon on the threshing floor. And as I prepared, I thought, I'm not really sure I know what threshing means. Better just look this up. And sure enough, I was off a little bit. But threshing is basically putting the grain out on this floor and then taking a tool, a threshing hammer type thing, and just clobbering it, just hitting that grain to separate the grain from the stalks. And I looked at that and I thought, oh yeah. So I got my rhythm sticks out. I ran to Hobby Lobby and looked in the dry floral section and bought some grain. And I got out some cutting boards. And I went into my 3 and 4-year-old class and I said, "Today, we're going to thresh." And I showed them how to lay the grain down, and they just hit it and hit it and hit it with their stick. There was grain flying everywhere. We were threshing. Well, I don't know about you, but when I get finished teaching, I gather up all the things that go back to my house because in my basement, I have a full resource center. And I gathered everything up. When I don't have time to put it all away, I have a table down there in the basement. I just lay it out on until I do have time. Well, it was a busy couple of weeks, and a few weeks passed, and it was a rainy day. Bowen and Kendall were over, and I said, "Hey, why don't we go downstairs and find some games to play with?" We went downstairs. Kendall walked past the table and saw the grain and the rhythm sticks laying there. And she looked up at me and said, "Silly Grandma, you been threshing?" Threshing. I know they had not been talking about threshing for the last couple of weeks at home, but an experience, a brand new word in her vocabulary. And now she understood several of the stories that are in the Bible because she knew what threshing actually meant. Whenever you're reading a book to the kids and you have something at home, a jar, something that's in the book, you know, in one of the pictures, a jar or a guitar or a tool or something you could bring in that the kids can pass around and touch and feel and use and smell, use all of their senses with. You really need to do that because that takes it from not being an experience to being an experience, and they'll remember those words. Now, I know that is a lot of extra time gathering those things up. I know it's a lot of energy. Believe me, I have carted in and out with supplies for the preschool class. I don't know how many times, and I continue to do it every week because I love it. That is just part of making a good experience for preschool ministry. That's part of fascinating them. And it's part of partnering with those other two groups that we want to partner with. Give them experiences that will show them the Bible stories. You are laying a foundation. You are investing in biblical literacy because that's what you can do when they are preschoolers. They can understand some of the other concepts, but if they get those stories down, then you have given them something to build on and let them experience as much a part of the stories as they can. Which brings me to the importance of story. Vocabulary building and story, and they go hand in hand. Story is huge to preschoolers. They want to hear stories. They want you to read stories to them. They want to hear your personal story. They want to reenact stories. They want to dress up to be part of a story. One of their favorite things is dress up. Princesses and superheroes. I think they would do that even if they'd never seen a princess or a superhero. They don't have to be around anyone. They'll go in their room and get out their cape and get out their mask and get out their crown and their pretty little dress, and they'll pretend and make up stories and retell stories that they've heard before because they love the story. In your preschool area, your main supply should be dress-up materials. I'm talking biblical costumes. I'm talking props, all kinds of things that are just everyday. Because not only can they dress up to reenact the Bible stories, this is the perfect time for them to dress up and do role play of life situations. This is when you will get them to act out how they really should respond to different situations. Dress up. So, we're used to having, in our biblical costumes, we have the wise man, we have a shepherd, and we have an angel, right? There's more to biblical costumes. You can get out an ephod. The high priest wore the ephod. The kids love this. We even made a hat out of a baker's hat for the high priest. Just some blue ribbon. Very easy to do. And we would call a high priest, choose one for the year. And then we put a black tablecloth over one of the tables. And we would say, Joey, you are the high priest. He'd put on the ephod and the hat, and he would go in under the table into the Holy of Holies. And then he would come out and I'd say, a year passed. We need to choose a high priest. And the next child would dress up like the high priest and go into the Holy of Holies. It's effective for them to put these costumes on. They need to do that. Bring in a shawl, a prayer shawl that, is the priest shawl that has the tassels and all of that, and explain to them what all of that means. Dress up is important. It's also important for you. And if you know me, you know that I love to use costumes in my storytelling. One of the books that I've put together is 17, 18 different storytelling techniques. Now, in my basement, we have dress-up clothes for Bowen and Kendall, and then we have silly grandma's dress-up clothes that you do not get into. And these are for my characters. But don't be afraid to bring in a character. Bring in puppets. This is Puppet on a Stick. Just Google Puppet on a Stick. And it's great for preschoolers. First of all, you can't break this thing. It has a knob at the bottom you can pull, or you can push on the tab. And that helps you according to the development of your preschooler, what they're able to do. But these come in aliens and sea creatures and My Little Pony type things, all kinds of puppets, but very, very good to use with preschoolers. You can also use repeat a rhyme. Anytime you have a story that has something that happens over and over again, then come up with a little rhyme that the kids say each time that happens. We told the story of Elijah sending his servant during the drought, sent the servant off to look for a cloud out of the sea. And he went 7 times. Every time he went, the kids would say, Elijah prayed with his face between his knees. Then he sent his servant off to search the skies above the seas. over and over again. Their music smart, multiple intelligence was brought in, and they went home saying that. Weeks later, I'm out on the patio. I look down, and Kendall has her head down between her knees underneath the chair. And I hear her saying something and bobbing up and down. And I said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "Elijah prayed with his face between his knees." And she remembered the whole thing. Story and how you present it is so important for preschoolers. It's huge in their lives. We want to give them an opportunity to engage in God's story. Ultimately, we want them to realize that God wants them to be part of his ongoing story. That's why it's important to minister to preschoolers. Okay, now we're going to move into a section that's going to deal with the importance of understanding the preschool brain development. And you may be asking, why is that important for us to understand? Well, in order for us to partner with parents and caretakers and preschool teachers, we need to know what's going on in their little brains. I am just totally amazed at this gray matter that God has put in our heads. And the more I find out, the more amazed I am. And so right now, I just want to share with you 5 very random brain facts. But as we look at them, I want us to come up with a takeaway, why it's important for us to understand this about preschool brain development and what it means for ministry. So let's start off with random brain fact number 1. Kids 18 months and younger. Okay, so we're talking infants up to a year and a half. When they experience something for the very first time, they assume that all things similar to that are going to be the same. That's a little hard to understand. Let me give you an example. Okay, you have an 18-month-old. You bring out a blue ball and you show them the blue ball, and then you squeeze the blue ball and the blue ball goes, and you put the blue ball behind your back. You bring the blue ball back out, you squeeze it, and it goes, and you put the blue ball behind your back. You bring the blue ball out and you set it there. The little one will reach for the blue ball and try to squeeze it, wanting it to go, Now that makes sense. What this brain fact is saying, though, the next time they see a blue ball that is about the same size as that one, they will reach out for it and try to squeeze it, assuming that it will go, and if it doesn't, they're going to be disappointed because they've made the assumption that blue balls go, Now, what does that mean for us? What is the takeaway for that? We bring in a child, a year and a half old, an infant, okay? You bring them in for the very first time to the nursery. The nursery attendant takes the child, oh, look at you, smiles all over, cuddles them, puts them down on the floor, gets down on the floor and says, here's a toy we're going to play with, and here we're going to roll this to you, and back and forth and conversation, and there's music going, and we're singing along. Next week, the child comes back. The nursery attendant greets the child, big smiles and cuddles and puts them down on the floor and plays with them, and the music is playing and they're happy, happy, happy. The third week they come in and the nursery attendant is kind of a solemn looking person, takes the child, puts the child on the floor surrounded by toys, and then sits down in the rocker to watch. Now you have an unhappy child because they're assuming that those first 2 weeks, the way I was cared for, that's the way I'm going to be cared for this week. That's why it is so, 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 so important to communicate with your nursery attendants what they need to do and how that should be uniform. That tells me that we need to invest in saying, okay, this is the protocol. This is exactly what we're going to do, because these little ones are assuming that this happens and this happens and this happens, and this is how I'm going to be treated. Random brain fact number 2. This one's crazy. This is just crazy wild. A baby at birth weighs 5% of what an average adult weighs, 160 pounds. Baby's weight, 5% of what the adult's weight is. Baby's brain weight is 30% of the adult brain weight. So their brains are already a third the size that they're going to be. All right. Now, this goes even further. An adult uses 20% of their body energy in brain function. So 20% of the energy that they're using goes for the work of their brain. In an infant, a nursing infant, almost all of their energy from their milk intake goes for brain function. Almost all of it. That is a lot of energy. That tells me, well, first of all, that should just rock your world. That tells me that when they come into the nursery, they are spending almost 100% of their energy taking in everything and everyone around them. They're using all of their energy to form their worldview, to figure out, do I like this place? Is this a good place for me? And this is why it's so important that bellies are full and bottoms are dry and kids are feeling loved and they're hearing God's word spoken to them and they're hearing praise music going on and the workers singing along with it. It's important that they feel a freedom to explore because they're using all of their energy for brain function. All of that to figure out what this church thing and this family of faith, this God thing is all about, even when they are just weeks old. We need to take advantage of how God has created their brains and start thinking about this in bigger terms than just babysitting. Random brain fact number 3. Your brain has a group of cells called mirror neurons. Mirror neurons are when you respond to someone because of the way they're looking or reacting. Okay, so when you smile, somebody smiles back at you. When you have a sad face, they tend to have a sad face back. The smile thing is like a personal challenge with me. You know, Walmart is, I think rightly so, declared the grumpiest place in the world. And so when I go to Walmart, I walk in intentionally thinking, I'm going to use my mirror neurons today. And I just see how many people I can smile at and get them to smile back at me. I know they're all going, crazy old lady, what is she doing? But I just walk up and down the aisle, smiling at kids, smiling at people. And in my head, I'm going, 7, 8, got another one. Okay. And they're wondering, do I know her from someplace? Who is that? But it's just a fun little game I play with mirror neurons. So what is our takeaway in preschool, early childhood ministry? The excitement that you have on your face, the excitement that you show when you open the Word of God, or when you tell a Bible story, or whatever you are doing to teach kids about the Word of God. If you do that with excitement, whatever you're doing with that, they're going to mirror it. If you are there begrudgingly, your kids are going to react that way. But if you go, okay, we're going to open the Bible, Or, oh, guys, it's time for us to open the Word of God. Come on, let's get them out. Here we go. Open them up here. Let's find. Totally different. Mirror neurons kick in, and they will start reacting automatically to the Word of God because of the way that you react to it. Brain fact number 4. While 30,000 fibers carry auditory information to the brain, 30,000 fibers carry auditory data to the brain, there are 1 million fibers that carry visual data to the brain. 30,000 auditory, 1 million carrying visual data. We think in pictures. That explains a lot of it. But think about the difference there. What is our takeaway for that? When we're teaching, do we want to use the 30,000 or do we want to use the 1 million? So if we're using the 30,000, it's talk, 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 talk. If we're using the million, we've got all these experiences, visual experiences that we're bringing in. That tells me that it should be more show than tell. So we move to the last one. Random brain fact number 5. During the 3-year span, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, that 3 years, you take in more information than any other 3-year span in your entire life. You take in more information during the years 3, 4, and 5 than any other time in your life. That is huge. My takeaway from that is it should never be babysitting. Our time with those kids is so limited that it should never be just, we'll take care of you. Because they are learning so much faster at this point, it would be better to babysit the adults and pour into the 3, 4, and 5-year-olds. At this point, they can learn multiple languages at one time. They are just sponges. So every moment counts. Don't give any of it away. Now, I think these are cool. Maybe you don't get excited as I am about this kind of stuff. But when I realize how God created us and knowing these things about the brains of preschoolers just makes me want to be in there with them even more because I have an opportunity to pour even more into them and have it soak in than any other age group. So that's the importance of preschool brain development. Okay, this last area that we're going to talk about is the importance of understanding the 4 areas of preschool development. And these areas are physical, intellectual, social and emotional, and spiritual. Now, at the beginning of the month, you received a paper from me that was compiled by my daughter-in-law, Kelly, and myself on partnering with preschool development. I want to highlight here that it is just a start. Okay. This is just some of those development markers. We just got started on this project, but I wanted to go ahead and pass it along to you just as a reference point. But keep in mind, this is not done. It is a work in progress, but it's going to give you different sections. It will talk about physical development and markers that you see physically in preschoolers. This is the kind of stuff that it'll have markers on stacking and building and jumping and tossing, all of those kind of things that are physical accomplishments, developmental markers. Then we'll have the intellectual section where things they are learning about. So in their markers will be, they're learning about their colors. They're learning about directional words. They're learning about the weather. Those kind of things will be covered in there. Then the social and emotional section will deal with relationships, fairness, generosity, making wise choices, manners, that kind of thing. Then there'll be a small section on the five senses. What I want to do as we approach these different areas of development is to see that we want to incorporate all that they are learning into the experiences that we offer them. It's that partnering thing again. Okay. So we don't want to say, oh, I'm going to partner with all of you guys. And so we're going to take a few minutes in our lesson and we're going to work on physical development. Now, everybody jump up and down 20 times. Okay. Now I said we're going to partner with your parents on intellectual. So let's all say our ABCs together. And now for our spiritual development, let's talk about how God created the world. That is siloing everything. What we want to do is incorporate their physical development and their social development and their intellectual development along with their spiritual development to get a well-rounded learner. And that's how we partner with their development with their parents and their families. We want all of that to intertwine. When we want to help parents raise well-rounded kids. The Bible tells us in Luke 2:52 that Jesus grew in wisdom and in stature, in favor with God and in favor with man. In other words, he grew in intellectually, physically, spiritually, and socially. He grew these same four ways, these same four areas of development. Now, if you know some of the other things that I do, I've written 17 books, and most of them are idea books. 2 of them are science books, Beaker's Bubbles in the Bible 1 and 2. And in those are like 110 different science experiments that connect with Scripture. And one of my favorites is the one that is an object lesson for Luke 2:52. And what you do is you take 4 balloons, 11 inches or bigger, and you blow them up halfway and tie them off. Then you take an industrial strength cookie sheet and you turn it upside down and trap the 4 balloons underneath in each corner, put that on the floor. Then you have someone that just kind of holds that steady so the balloons don't take off or anything. And you can take one of your preschoolers, or actually you can take an adult. I've never had any of the balloons pop. So you can take any child you want, but preschooler in this situation. And you just let them take your elbow and they will step up on that cookie sheet and balance themselves with the 4 balloons. Now, I'm going to have couple of my favorite little helpers come show you this experiment. And Olivia and Emma Olivia's going to stand on the cookie sheet with the balloons underneath there. And then we'll talk more about what this means and how it depicts Luke 2:52. All right. With me here today is Olivia, and Olivia just turned 4 years old, and her older sister Emma, who is in 1st grade. And we're going to show you this experiment of the 4 balloons that are trapped under the cookie sheet. So Olivia, the first thing I want you to do is I want you to take my elbow, and you're going to step up all the way in the middle with one foot, then up with the other. There you go. Now, when you feel good, you can let go of my elbow. All right, there you go. And you look at the camera. There she is. She's all balanced. We have the 4 balloons under there. The physical development, the intellectual development, the social and emotional development, and spiritual development. And you notice that all the balloons are relatively the same size. Okay, Olivia, I know you'd like to stay there for a while. You're pretty amazing, but take my elbow and step off carefully. Good. We don't want the kids to jump up on this and wear shoes that have tread on them or go barefoot when they do this. Thank you very much for helping, girls. That was really good.
Can you pop the balloons?
No, we're not going to pop the balloons right now. Now, what would have happened if I took a pin and popped one of the balloons that was under Olivia? she wouldn't have been balanced anymore, right? What would have happened if I had decided, instead of blowing those 4 balloons up so they were about the same size, that one of them I just and blew into as far as it would go? She couldn't have been balanced. One of the things that we need to help parents understand is that all 4 balloons need to be balanced. They need to have air in them. And we tend to neglect one, which is most often the spiritual one, which now we don't have a well-balanced child. Or we let one of those areas get crazy out of proportion, like the intellectual. My child, oh yeah, they just turned 3. They know their multiplication tables and the names and years of inauguration of all the presidents of the United States. And they get it out of whack. Okay, so we want to keep all 4 of those areas so that we raise a well-rounded, well-balanced child. So that is an excellent object lesson to show at a parent meeting, at your teacher meeting, and to show with your kids that they need also to invest in all 4 areas and be conscious of those. Their stages of development can be short or they can take forever. So these markers, you can't say at 2 years and 10 months, they are going to do this. You can't do that. Some children will get on a bike with training wheels and 4 weeks later, they're like, get rid of those things. The next child, same age, wants 3 summers before they will let you take off the training wheels. One year I had Bowen and Kendall out in the backyard. They were probably about 2.5 years old. We were playing on some pavers that were in a line. There were 9 of them. The previous owner of the house had put this line of stepping stones there. And I watched the kids and they were going hop, 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 hop. 6 stones, and they would turn around and hop back and forth and back and forth. 6 stones down, 6 stones back. But there were 9 stones in the row. After they left, I went out and I looked at them. Why were they not going any further? They were having so much fun on these. And I noticed that the first 6 were only about 6 inches apart. Between 6 and 7, 7 and 8 and 8 and 9, it was more like 14 inches apart. Developmentally, they felt very safe with the first 6. They weren't quite ready to make that jump to the next one. So you can't say that at a certain age they will do this or how far they will go. It's one of the things that makes preschool ministry interesting. You can have a different child in 2 weeks. Your class is constantly changing. If you teach preschoolers, you constantly have to reevaluate. What are they doing? Their language skills, they may go from saying 2 or 3 word phrases to complete sentences in 1 week. We had a little boy that during worship time, all he wanted to do was run around everywhere. And he kind of had a grumpy look on his face. 1 week he comes in, he puts himself right in the middle of the group. He's singing these songs that have words that lots and lots and lots of words to it, knew all of them, and he had a pleasant look on his face. What happened? Developmentally, something clicked. Something happened developmentally, and he was just in a different place now. So you have to constantly reevaluate that. That is why it is so difficult to choose a preschool curriculum, because you can't choose for 3-year-olds. What does that mean? Does it mean a 3-year-old that's 3 years and 1 month? Or 3 years and 11 months and almost a 4-year-old? Because when you're 3, that year is compared to a third of your previous life. And so you're always reevaluating because kids' development changes so quickly. And they learn things at different ages. You can't say that you're going to learn this at a certain age. It's just a general flow when we talk about how kids learn in their developmental stages. It usually goes from this to this, but not always on the same timeline. You know, we also tend to label kids, preschoolers, as hyperactive, overactive, and high energy, and ADHD, and put all these labels on them when in fact, what is happening is they're exploring. They are fascinated with themselves. They usually have scrapes because they don't know how long their arms are or how far they can jump or how long their legs are because they're growing so fast. There was a time when Kendall was about 3 years old that I thought she was just enjoying playing with Band-Aids because every time I saw her, she had Band-Aids all over. And it wasn't that at all. She just could hardly take a step without tripping or falling or scraping herself in some way. And she was constantly covered in Band-Aids. They're just exploring who they are and what their bodies will do. And that takes lots and lots of energy. We want to concentrate on their spiritual development by fascinating them with activities that incorporate the physical, the intellectual, the emotional and social, all of these different things. And that's how we can fascinate them and partner with their parents and their educators. As you go through that paper, I want you to read all of the markers for the physical. I want you to read all of the markers for the intellectual. Read all the markers for the social and emotional development. Then read that short section on senses. Then when you go to the spiritual development, all you're going to find is a list of things that they are capable of understanding spiritually. And as you look at those, I want you to say, how can I incorporate these other markers that I just read about into a fascinating activity that will teach kids this spiritual concept? That's the best way to partner with their parents and their educators. That's your challenge. That's early childhood ministry. Enjoy. We'll talk soon.